They have freedom with their time. You know, they don't have a 9 to 5. They have to be somewhere. I mean, of course, there are a lot of people that have jobs here, but I don't know, the unemployment rate, I think, might be somewhat high here. You know, there are quite a few people who basically are entrepreneurs, you know, in a way.
People in the rural areas live on land they own.
Yes.
And they don't have, there's not a debt associated with that ownership.
Sure.
And property taxes here essentially are zero.
The global currency reset, the quantum financial system that's currently running concurrently, parallel to the existing system. These global controls with regard to central banking, digital currencies, or cryptocurrencies, or social credit scores like they have in China, and all these different mark of the beast, you know, like all of this stuff, that's happening everywhere in the world, right? So the question right now, at least that I hope people ask themselves, isn't like, how do I escape that? How do I avoid that?
My understanding is that in the Ecuadorian constitution, they prohibit growing GMO crops in Ecuador, except under experimental usage.
Nobody's getting sued here for medical malpractice. To my knowledge, like, does not exist. Like, I don't know that there's never been a lawsuit over a doctor screwing up, but that is not something that goes on here at all. So what all that leads to is a human interaction that's dirt cheap, right? So it's very inexpensive. So your normal doctor visit in this area is 30 to 40 bucks. Like, that's what the visit costs you to pay out of pocket, no insurance, no deductible. Welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Brandon, Carl, thanks for tuning in. We just finished like a 45-minute political debate, which of course I won. You know, who else would win?
I didn't participate.
You're generally speaking, you're smart. You like stay out of the fray.
I let you two go at it. It was entertaining. I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
And obviously, you know, like any argument, one of the parties completely changed their mind and agreed with the other person, right?
For sure.
Arguing is very useful, useful thing to do. Anyways, we're going to talk about a number of things today. There's a little bit of news that I found interesting in the assassination of the former presidential candidate Villavicencio. I forget his first name. Talk about that. We're going to talk about, you know, wild geopolitical times at the moment, right? We've got, you know, a few things globally that people are concerned with. World War III and what's going on in Israel, not the least of which. So we're going to talk about kind of how does Ecuador fit in to those events as a place to live. You know, does it solve for any of those concerns? Does it not? Pros and cons. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and this, by the way, that topic came from a viewer. Let's see if I have the name here. Todd Davis, I believe. Yes, is that accurate, Carl? That you
Todd
sent
Davis?
Here?
No,
that is not accurate. All right,
that's
well,
funny.
Carl. All right.
What's up, Todd?
What's up, Todd?
Glad I could make you guys laugh. But of a viewer, and then this other question.
That's from Jesse.
It's from Jesse Sheldon Huffy, 1824.
Not male Jesse. Looks like female Jesse.
Female
in the picture.
Jesse. That's right.
Jesse.
So yeah, this is going to be fun too. We're going to jump into her question, and she has some concerns about staying in the U.S. and brought up, you know, a nice list here of about 6 points, including GMOs and the digital dollar and chemtrails and all kinds of stuff, corruption. So we're going to jump into her concerns and how that relates to Ecuador and life here. So it should be an interesting topic. We may or may not get banned off of YouTube after we talk about these things.
Let's try not to get banned.
Yeah, let's definitely not get banned. But Jesse's list is like the list of questions that we get off the cuff, off the record all the time. Like, these are the questions everybody's thinking about, everybody wants to ask, but nobody's really brave enough to post them in the comments or have you know what I mean? Like, and Jesse did it, so I think this is a good.
By the way, I'm holding here. Check this out. This is my wife's kombucha. And an example of all of the cool cottage industries in Vilcabamba. So my wife brews this this delicious kombucha, sells it all over town, and there's products like that everywhere in Vilcabamba.
On that note, today we are sharing a wine bottle from Ambrosia, made here in Vilcabamba. This is Mora Blackberry wine from Neri Santin, who is a fellow Correísta Cheers, Neri. Hasta la victoria. Siempre. Cheers, guys.
Mine's gone.
Oh.
Salud.
Salud.
I'm just kidding, but
Right.
Neri's a
And
great
Carl
guy.
didn't even start drinking yet, man.
Not even haven't started, but no, it's great wines. A little sweet, and Neri is actually also the town's ambulance driver as
Is that
well.
right? Nice.
So he sells wine, makes wines, and drives the ambulance. So
It's tasty wine.
he and on a anecdote, Neri, who makes this wine, was there when my son was born, in a home birth up the mountain in Capamaco. He actually drove over there with the ambulance. We didn't need the ambulance, but
Wow.
they were there just in case.
Wow, very
So-
cool.
Hey, let's go
Yeah.
back to this because this kombucha, the Tiff and the kids and I, when we were in the States, we used to go to these boutique kombucha places where
Yep.
they would have all these different brewed kombuchas, and you can go and they had them on tap and you can try them all. And I mean, you'd pay an arm and a leg to get good kombucha. And then we came here, and kind of like we did with coffee, there's 1,000 coffees. We tried a whole bunch of coffees. We tried a bunch of different kombuchas in the area. And before we even knew that this was Idea's,
Yep.
this is the only brand the kids would buy. This is the only thing we bought in our house, the kids and Tiffany. And there was a different label. There's another flavor that they really like. I don't remember. It's a more red version.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
she does several flavors.
Yeah.
The red one is the most popular.
The most popular, right? That was the first one we tried, and that was the only thing.
Frutos rojos.
Frutos rojos, yeah, but this is the only kombucha we have in the house, and like we're snobs about it, man. So we came
Good to have
here.
a fellow
and
snob.
It's not even right, but it's not like, oh yeah, we drink it now because Jesse's wife makes it. No, like really, it just happened that way. And
Kombucha wars.
it's freaking awesome. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, she actually does do a phenomenal job. I really drank a lot of kombucha in the States and was very particular and really didn't drink kombucha here because I didn't like most of them, but she actually nailed it. It's thank you. Anyways, all right, let's do it. Actually, I have a quick anecdote and it kind of relates to today's topic, somewhat. So, I was in a sentimental mood yesterday, and I was watching. Making Brandon laugh already. I was watching. I put on the movie, which I know you haven't seen because we've talked about it. Carl is just, there's not a chance. It's called. It's called. It's a Wonderful Life. Have you seen that movie?
It's what, 1930s?
Jimmy Stewart.
Is it 30s, 40s?
Probably 40s or 50s, but yeah, 40s or 50s probably.
Oh, is it 50s? You think?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
really.
black and white. It's
Yeah.
very old.
Yeah.
No,
Anyways.
I don't. It's not Life is Beautiful.
It's not Life is Beautiful. Anyways, Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life. For those of you out there, throw it in the comments. It's a Wonderful Life. Tell us your favorite scene. Tell us your favorite line. Anyways, I'm flying solo here since these guys have never seen it,
I
but
mean, it looks
I'm
great.
watching this movie. So this movie is a Christmas movie from the 40s or 50s. Very heartwarming, heartfelt story. Basically, this guy, he's a great guy. He can't live out his dreams because he's always doing the right thing and making these moral choices. And he ends up, he's kind of a bedrock in the town and supports people buying homes and is a family man and really does the right thing his whole life. And as a result, kind of gets a little frustrated and can't live all his dreams. And then a family member, business partner of his, loses $8,000, which would probably equate to like $250,000 now or something. And the bank examiner comes, and it's Christmas Eve, and he's about to get arrested and go to jail, and his whole world's falling apart.
And he's jaded at
And
this time?
a little bit, a little,
okay.
a little bit. And he's ready to kill himself, right? He's got this life insurance policy, and he's standing at the bridge, and anyways, so God sends his guardian angel down, and his guardian angel comes down, and his job is to, save this guy, and then the angel will get his wings because he's a second-class angel. He doesn't have his wings yet.
Wow.
Clarence, and so Clarence, yeah. The whole movie's great. This is where Bert and Ernie comes from, by the way. Like Bert and Ernie, Sesame Street, like Bert and Ernie
are
comes
real?
from this movie, who is a cop and a taxi driver named Bert and Ernie.
And they're roommates?
They're not roommates. No, they're not roommates.
Good friends.
Yeah, they're friends. They're
Okay.
friends. Anyways, so the plot, by the way, I just told you guys because I wanted to. It has nothing to do with the point I'm making. The point I want to make is that in this movie, right? I think it takes place in upstate New York, and it's a medium-sized town in upstate New York, and you get to see sort of the way it operates, how friendly everybody is to each other, how informal things are, how there's very little, if any, sort of cultural expectation of it has to be this way, it has to be this way, it has to be this way. We're judging about everything. We're really into the rules about everything. The policeman, who's either Bert or Ernie, is a great guy, and they're very friendly, and everyone's nice, and it just has that sort of 1950s or whatever small town feel, including the way the banks work and the way kind of just life is there. There's a scene where at the prom, there's a scene where somebody presses the button on the floor and it opens up and there's a pool underneath and everyone ends up jumping in. But anyways, you're looking at this prom scene. It's not like a prom scene would be now, right? With like people being jerks and all the like cliques and judgments and all this stuff. It's like human. It's very human. And what it reminded me of when I'm watching the movie is like, this is how Ecuador is now.
Right.
You know, the 19... And look, this is a movie. I'm not saying that's how it was. I don't know. I wasn't there. I was born in 1982. But you know, however this movie portrays 1940s, 1950s America is how Ecuador operates now. Right. Culturally, the way people function, all the stuff I mentioned. So anyways,
we've talked about that a little bit, where we've made references even back to the 80s and 90s, and it's, you know, not quite the same level, but just the ideal, like the family value ideals you see on sitcoms in the United States. And yes, it wasn't exactly like that in the States, but it was based on that ideal. Like society was based on that, or was striving to be that, or expectations of that. Same with that, probably. Maybe it wasn't actually like that. But what's interesting is that, you know, that's what I tell when I go back home and I talk, you know, when I talk to people that I haven't talked to before about Ecuador, and they're asking me what it's like, and I bring up stuff like what you just described, because that's how it actually feels here. It feels like that's what it would have felt like back then, because the only perception I have of back then is from those movies or those shows, but it feels like that's what it would have been like. And
interesting.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I remember you brought up the Cosby Show and some other shows on a previous episode. I was watching this thing. So Bill Cosby, when the Cosby Show was running, which I think was basically the 90s. I don't know if it was in the 80s also, but
I think it might have been 80s.
80s into the 90s. Yeah, I think it was like a 10-year run or something, 10 years that it was on TV. Probably 80s into 90s, right? So when that show was running, so he was a doctor, I believe, and she was a lawyer, or vice versa. Yeah, he was doctor, she was a lawyer. So Black Americans enrolled as doctors and lawyers at a statistically very significantly higher rate
because of
the Cosby Show. And there were some other examples in this little video I was watching of, it was like there was another movie show that they referenced where they had people were stealing cars, and there was this show on TV or this big movie and car thefts went up in a statistically significant way.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote a whole book on that.
Yeah,
it's about social epidemics where, you know, and he talked about the psychology behind why some of these social epidemics happen, and does all this research on, you know, there's a city in Japan that has like the highest suicide rate, and then he went in and understood, and it was all the media was always talking about it. So it was like, it was popular culture that everybody talked about suicide. So then more people opted, well, it's socially okay, it's acceptable, it's okay, right? That's the same. The Cosbys reached so many people at that time that it became like socially acceptable. Yeah, a black person can be a doctor. Holy cow! Like, that's so novel. But you know, people believed it for the first time, right? They believed it, and you saw the increase in enrollments. You saw the increase in colleges and lawyers and doctors and. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I think the book is called The Tipping Point. I think it's Tipping Point is the name of the book, if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah, fascinating. Reminds me of, and I don't know which one, is it the 100 meters? Once someone broke a certain...
it was the 6 minute mile, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, the 6 minute mile, okay. Different. But
No, but
under 6 minutes, right? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden everyone's doing it.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it was like prior to that, they were said, you know, your heart would give out and you die basically and then one person, yeah, exactly. All right, should we do it, gentlemen?
Let's do
Let's
it.
keep talking about pop culture.
So-
Hey,
why not?
if you guys haven't already and you're liking our content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you haven't yet. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the support. If you have questions that we haven't answered, or you'd like better answers or more clear answers, or want us to go deeper, put those comments down below. And if you have new things that you'd like us to chat about or share perspective on, go ahead and put those in the comments below as well. Thanks, guys.
That's right.
So, I don't know who this comes from. Maybe we'll check and get it out
Actually-
on the next. You know who it is?
Yeah. It's someone that lives here in Vilcabamba.
Carl would rather not share, it looks like. Okay.
All right.
I don't know if they want us to share their
Okay.
identity. It was
right.
a private message that they
Private
can,
message.
Can you use like a pseudonym for them?
So we're going with Mike. This is for Mike.
All right.
That's good. That's
Just an idea for a video. How the world is spiraling into wars in many places. The Middle East is a true hotbed. Europe, Russia is historically, and today, a war field. USA, China, nuclear missiles targeted all over the global north. And although there is some narco problems in Ecuador's ghettos in large cities, rural Ecuador and Loja province, how can anyone think that wars or nuclear missiles would come here? Come to Ecuador as a refuge from a world descending into war. It is a very safe place. So interesting opinion, interesting topics. You know, let's jump into it and break it down. So, yeah, I mean, we have to, I guess, to talk about this, you've got to start with what's going on in Israel right now. So, you know, I'm not going to recap the situation because I think everybody watching this is probably following it to some
I
degree.
mean, it's everywhere. You can't not know. It's across all social media, and there's reasons for that, man. It's atrocious and brutal, but there's definite reasons that it's everywhere for everybody to see. You know, especially considering, like, we've seen how popular the Ukraine war with Russia was, and you're seeing footage that they're releasing about that people are catching that, hey, that was from like 5 years ago, that's not even current footage. And you're seeing the difference, and then all of a sudden here now you're seeing all this really gruesome, you know, brutal footage that everybody has all of a sudden. I mean, like, disrespectful, like, just despicable things, but you don't see much of that from this other war. So, you know, why is that? I don't know if we're going to go into that today, but there's definite reasons on why one war is getting the publicity it's getting, and this one now is getting other publicity. But let's continue. So everybody sees it, so we don't need to recap what's going on. It's atrocious, and despicable.
So you know, if you're conspiratorially minded and you followed some of the prophecies and some of the, you know, stuff that's out there, World War III kicking off between the Muslim world or the Arab world and Israel, with the two power blocks that line up behind those countries, you know, essentially the West behind Israel and the Russia, China, you know, Middle East bloc behind, you know, in this case, Palestine or you know, however that plays out, then that's something that you would have been on your radar screen. And now we have this going on, and hopefully it amounts to very little, and we get, you know, some peaceful stuff happening soon, but we don't know, right? So it is interesting to me because, you know, as I was, and this is going back, you know, over 10 years now, probably 12 years ago, I first started thinking about living somewhere else. When I was thinking about those things, you know, I was concerned about events like this, right? These were things that were on my radar screen. Like, you know, I'm living in New York City at the time, and it's like, man, if there's a disruption to the monetary system, or if there's a disruption of the food supply, or if there's some kind of, you know, global war or whatever, New York City's probably not the best place to be, right?
Nor is probably any major metro area, right? I mean, those are probably the worst places to be in any type of, if any of these types of events break out anywhere where you're from in the world, a large metro area is the worst place to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And probably more so in certain places than others,
Right.
but yeah, even anywhere, right? So, and there's so many nuclear power plants in the U.S. and the U.S. and other countries would be at the forefront of any conflict. Like, the U.S. kind of plays global police in a certain way,
Right.
and U.S. has been in war for 200 years. There's always, right. So when you're kind of looking at that, and thinking about those things, it starts to make places south of the equator look interesting. Places that either don't have a military or have very little military. Most countries have a military, but like Ecuador doesn't have any fighter jets. There's no missiles in Ecuador. There's like a few guys hanging out with some guns, and that's the military. And they're like nice guys, and yeah. So there's some really funny stories about when Ecuador and Peru had a war. That I won't say them because I don't know if any of them are true, but there's very funny stories about guys like they're gonna fight and then they just kind of drop their guns and leave, and and I don't know how much, I wasn't there, but so places though that are a little bit off the beaten path, that are not important militarily, are not important economically, and have something I didn't realize the importance of, but I've learned since I've been here, have such a simple economic system and supply chain, where it's like you still have that 1950s U.S. culture where all the men know how to fix everything, where everybody grows food. It would have like victory gardens during World War II.
Right.
Here
it's part of life.
Right. So instead of lawns, like people grow patches of vegetables, and that's just how life is here. So. It becomes an attractive place in that context.
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys?
Yeah. I mean, I guess when you look at it from that perspective, and you have what Ecuador has to offer from that perspective, is from a culture perspective, right? The victory gardens was a reaction to a situation. Like
right.
the culture here in Ecuador is just the way it is. It's not a reaction to anything. It's just a very ingenuity driven society, a different, at least in this part of in this region, where like you said, people fix everything, people reuse everything, they sew things, they and part of that is the trade you make and the time value of money, or the time value of money may not even exist in the same way we think about it in the States.
Yeah.
The cost of labor here. So when you think about all those things, it's not a surprise that the country or this region is so, I don't even know it's like ingenuity is the word, but I don't know how to really say it, but it's like teamwork. It's collaborative in a way where
totally
people work together to fix things.
It's a very
they problem
communal
solve.
society.
Yeah. So, but it's not a reaction from like an acute event. It's like something that's developed over time, and maybe there was an acute event that set it off. But it's just the way the culture is. So then to come here and be part of that culture, it's rewarding, and it helps you really recalibrate, expectations on what value really is, what's important to you, like things we've talked about in the past on, to think about what your values really are. That's a hard question that I don't think a lot of people actually give themselves time to think about and then identify for themselves. It's something I didn't do for a really long time, and it's not something that's easy to do. You have to really set time aside and think through what your values are and understand that. And here, it allows you to do that. Like the culture allows you to do that, but you realize what some of those values are because of the things we just talked about, and it's interesting, right? So that's a way to leave, you're missing some of that, drama or or false dichotomous. It's just like this intentional divide stuff that you see with a lot of these political news stories and global machinations, most of which we have zero control over. You can come to Ecuador and not be not participate in that to some extent because of the things you said, Jesse. They're not a big military presence. Again, it's the size of Colorado. It's the size of a state. It's a small country that's not on the map in a lot of ways, geopolitically. So they're not involved in a lot of that stuff, and the culture here isn't involved, and they don't care about that stuff. And that's there's like some, again, ignorance is bliss. I get where that comes from, and maybe there's a genius to that here.
Yeah, I was going to add something that I always thought was interesting about this place, and I would assume that it used to be even more so than now, but I don't know statistically what the unemployment rates are in Ecuador, but I know a lot of Ecuadorians here that don't have a job, that don't have a full-time job, or even they don't even get employed. Basically their livelihood is from whatever they can produce. So a lot of times they'll have gardens, they'll have fruit trees, or they'll have cows on the mountain that they go and milk, and they'll sell one once in a while for meat, and if they could find little things on the side to do. But I think that kind of part of the agrarian society that we live where we live here is one of the reasons why people have so much ingenuity, and they're they have freedom with their time. They don't have a 9 to 5. They have to be somewhere. Of course, there are a lot of people that have jobs here, but I don't know the unemployment rate. I think might be somewhat high here. There are quite a few people who basically are entrepreneurs, in a way. They're growing food or selling something that they make. We have a neighbor. He makes bamboo furniture out of his little, and he sells that wherever he can find a place to sell it, and
it's like what we would call back home the informal society, the informal economy.
And that supports the robustness of the simplicity that you talked about in the economy. It's not this complex, system of, supply chains and trade and all that. It's not that. They're not. A lot of things are made here in Ecuador. They're exporting a significant, way more than most people probably realize, and they're net exporters of goods. So you see that here, and you're like, wow, you see how simply it can be and how successful it can be. And when there's simplicity to economic supply chains and the robustness of the culture that supports it, when some of these geopolitical events do manifest and happen outside of our control anyway, then they're much more tolerable and much less impactful in places like Ecuador.
Yeah, so, and actually one point I wanted to make on that, part of the reason that works, that what you're talking about, is because people in the rural areas live on land they own.
Yes.
And they don't have, there's not a debt associated with that ownership.
Sure.
And property taxes here essentially are zero.
Right.
You pay 0.1% of the tax assessed value annually. So on $100,000 of tax assessed value, which probably it's worth 3 times more than that, you pay $100 a year for property tax. So you don't have that hamster wheel pressure to bring in enough money to cover your monthly nut. So you can live a simple life, and the cost of living is low enough that if you make some furniture and sell a couple of chairs, you can be fine for the month or for the quarter or whatever. So that works here. And it's not that there isn't any debt here, but most people who are living that life have very little to no debt. In most cases, none. And that's allows for a simpler life. And I think the other thing that really plays into that, a simpler, more sustainable life, more relaxed life, less pressure.
Tranquilo.
I think, right. I think the other thing that plays into that is the climate.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to get your harvest in before winter and then survive for 6 months,
Oh my God, man. Tiffany and I were so frustrated. So we lived in the Midwest, Northern Illinois, just outside of Chicago. and we would have, we had this little farmstead before we came to Ecuador, 5 acres, and we had chickens, and we did these big gardens, and I had indoor gardens and indoor growing and aeroponics and hydroponics and all this stuff.
Awesome.
But outside, when we would try this big garden, you have a very select period of time, very small period of time to get your harvest started, get your seeds started, get it planted, get it growing, get it harvested, defend against certain pests and hope that you have a crop, because
the frost
comes and it's over, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was this year that was so frustrating. We had all these I don't even remember, I had like 50 some odd bell pepper plants, a very specific heirloom variety that we had, and I started them early indoors so that we could really maximize harvest. I'd overwintered some pepper plants, which I don't know if you guys know this, but pepper plants you can actually bring indoors for the winter and keep them alive, overwinter them, and from one year to the next, so maybe 1 year on a traditional harvest of a bell pepper, you might get, 20 peppers or so. I don't recall exactly. The next year it'll be 5x that. If you overwinter them, keep them alive, you bring them back out, you're going to get 100 peppers in that harvest next year. I tried to do it a third year, and then it decreased. So, but you can overwinter peppers. But that's not the point of the story. The point is, we had done all this work to do this huge pepper crop, and we planted them all, and they were phenomenal. We had the great compost. We had everything right, and we had them all planted. And then I go out there 2 days later, and there's like half of the plants are literally gone. And we had electric fences for deer so that they couldn't get over, solar electric fences, because we were out in the country, and we had all the marigolds planted around so the rabbits couldn't get through. We were doing everything, and half of the pepper plants were gone, but all we had were leaves, a pile of leaves left. The stalk was completely gone. The branches were gone. I'm like, what in the hell happened, right? So I go back and I'm researching, trying to figure it out, and there's like this, I guess it's like a cutter, some type of cutter ant or cutter bug.
Leaf cutter ants.
Leaf cutter, well, it's like a cutter. It's some type of insect that actually comes, cuts it off, and then it pulls the stalk and root system down into the ground. Wow. And it leaves the leaves there, and it pecks. So I figure it out the next day, and I forget what we were going to try, like a diatomaceous, or there was some combination. I don't even remember what the solution was, from an organic perspective or a chemical-free perspective. But it was we had the remedy, and we go back to the next day. All of them were gone. Wow. Every single plant was gone. It was just piles of leaves. I was furious, but the end of the day, the point of me even sharing this was, it was so late into the season by that point that I couldn't even start over.
Yeah.
Like, you have one blight, you have one insect that destroys your crop, and you're screwed, man. You don't have time to start over to harvest and plant outside. And right, Ecuador is different, right? So there are pests here. There are things you're going to have to deal with and balance that microbiome and that nature, and that create that symbiotic relationship with the bacteria and microbes and ribosomes and fungi in the soil and things in the air and yada yada. But man, if you lose that battle, you can just start over again, and it's all good, right? For the most part, you have 3 or 4. Sometimes I've heard even 5 harvest cycles for certain types of produce here in Ecuador.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are still seasons here, right? There's the rainy season, the dry season, and people plant depending on that. But there's no harsh winters, so it's a game changer. You basically can grow all year round, which is quite amazing. Just to jump on what we were talking about real quick, also you mentioned a lot of the local people that work in agriculture, that do agriculture, they own their own properties, and even if they don't, or even if they own some but they want to expand a little bit, typically they'll look for opportunities to maybe rent some of your land, right, to put animals, or to plant a patch of corn, or to plant some zapallo or some pumpkin or something like that, right? So they're very they look for opportunities when it comes to agriculture. Definitely, we have people come by the office all the time, are like, about this property, it looks like nobody's using it. Maybe I could plant some guy told me yesterday they wanted to plant some pumpkins with the property that we have for sale, right? And they wanted us to ask the owner.
Is that
So-
Sapaio? Is
Sapaio, yeah.
Sapaio is pumpkin?
It's a squash. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a squash.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing that's interesting here. So if you have a lot of land, you can rent some of your land, have someone else maintain it or take care of it, plant things on it, improve it for you for free usually, right? Or they'll sometimes even pay you to be able to use some of your.
Yeah, you get a little rent for it, a few $100s a year, perhaps,
Right.
something like that. But it gets maintained,
Right.
So, all right, let's run through a few or a couple of scenarios and kind of give our thoughts. And this is all speculation, of course, but we've been here a long time.
You don't have a crystal ball, Jesse?
I do. I'm just not
Man,
sharing it with you.
I've watched your videos before I even came to Ecuador.
Yeah.
I watched your videos from 10 years ago. I don't know how long you've been doing them, but it was just you. Half the time you're wearing a suit.
Yep.
But then I saw some other ones where you're like in the mountains, just looking off in the mountains and the vistas, and just like, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, I'm making fun of you because
You're allowed.
It's actually pretty priceless.
Yeah.
So go watch some of those videos of Jesse back in the day. But you talked about a lot of things where, man, you kind of had a crystal ball on a lot of this stuff, on a lot of these things. So do you really have one?
Yeah, I do.
Is it a magic 8-ball?
No. I swear. Like not to toot my own horn. No, but yeah, I mean a lot of the reasons that I moved to Ecuador 10 years ago, started thinking about it 12 years ago, have played out.
Right.
Like a lot of them. And, looking back on that decision over the last number of years, it's like fist pump. Like, I'm very happy that I made that choice at that time. Yeah. To deal with what life is like here now versus what some of the stuff that's going on with inflation, for example, back home, with the whole COVID situation and all that, and all kinds of other stuff. So, all right, so yeah, let's run through a couple scenarios. So let's say let's take a maybe not worst case, the world's not blowing itself up with nuclear missiles. Let's not go that far. But let's say there is a global conflict, for real. Like let's say there is kind of a World War III of some type. What does that look like in Ecuador? So, outside of imported products probably become much less available. Right? So electronics, you're probably not going to be able to go to the store and get a washing machine very easily.
I don't know, a lot of that stuff's from Peru, right?
They do manufacture a lot of those here. Like Indurama, I'm pretty sure it's made in
that's
Ecuador.
certainly a Latin American,
Right.
Pretty sure it's made in Ecuador,
Is it?
actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's quite a few, there's more, it seems like there's more manufacturing of those types of things in other parts of Latin America than Ecuador, but there are some in Ecuador.
Colombia, yeah.
So some of the...
And there's all the trade agreements
Right.
in Latin America.
Right. So some of the European branded and American branded, manufactured.
There is a lot of
goods.
Chinese products here that would probably be more scarce.
Probably,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
No, that's true. Yeah, actually, there's a significant number of Chinese products.
Yeah, but the point is a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
The point is that your selection probably diminishes, and maybe prices, because there's less competition, maybe prices trickle up slightly, but it's probably not as dramatic as a place where that's importing everything. Like the U.S. doesn't manufacture a ton of things anymore. They've was that FACTA with Bill Clinton enacted back in the day, where that's where a lot of things was that FACTA. That wasn't FACTA. That was
you're talking about like the '94 trade agreement.
What was that?
Yeah,
what was it called?
NAFTA.
NAFTA. All right, wrong acronym.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like at that point, that's when my dad was in golf club manufacturing back then, and that's when everybody's like, oh, let's go to China, let's go
Mexico,
overseas, let's go to Mexico.
Yeah.
So then that became like a trend in American business where everything was manufactured overseas. And there's been some level of return to manufacturing, and there was more of a American made kind of champion campaign back after like September 11th. But a lot of that was more just like socially, and there was a lot of companies didn't really bring things back, Some did, but a lot of things are still manufactured. They're U.S. brands that they're not manufactured in the U.S. So,
Right.
so a country like the U.S. in a global conflict like you described, it's going to be involved, right? Because like materially involved, whether tacitly or directly, the goods that they import are going to, that's different. That's a much different game.
Right. Well, and I mean the U.S. like an economy like the U.S. I mean, they import their chicken.
Yeah, right.
It's not just that like your washing machine,
Right.
Has parts from all over the world and is probably manufactured in Asia or Central America or whatever. It's that your chicken gets produced in Tennessee, shipped to China for processing, and then shipped back
Right.
to a distribution
It's so
center,
wild.
and then
It's wild.
it's wild, and then distributed all over the U.S. And then you go to your your supermarket and buy it. Like your supply chain for chicken, where we live, is like that one running around right there. I'll take that one, right? And I mean, I'm joking, sort of, but you can do this.
Right.
I've done this quite a few times before, and they'll ask you like, do you want it dead or alive?
Right.
They'll ask you that, and they'll also ask you like, do you want me to pluck it? Right? Like, do you want it like? Because that'll take a few hours. So come back at Right? So this is your supply chain of stuff like that here.
Right.
So, but I could see there being some scarcity of goods,
Right.
Imported goods. I would expect that, in my opinion. We'll get it. The next scenario I want to run through is the monetary system, which we'll get to. So I won't get into banks and stuff now, but I could see there being some disruptions there potentially. But like in general, I don't know how affected your life would be.
Yeah. Is it? How immature is it? That
Well, it's-
when you describe that, how you want your chicken dead or alive, that I immediately think of Bon Jovi. Wanted, dead or alive.
Wouldn't say
That's immediately in my head. Like it's and I can't stop thinking about it now. I was singing it in my head as you're saying. I'm laughing to myself like an 8-year-old boy, and that's it. But anyway, you don't have to answer that. Speaking of chickens, last night my daughter danced at the Our Lady of Fatima. So that's in the Catholic religion, that's the name of the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus, and they were celebrating the Fatima last night in the barrio Izhcayluma, and Bella danced, and we were there, and they're doing this whole celebration, and they have music and different dancing and raffles and all this stuff, and we get there, and I mean, we were literally the only gringos in the whole thing. It was my family, and it was great. We knew some of the Ecuadorians that we've become friends with, and they were excited. It was like everybody staring. Like, oh, there was some gringos there, so that was a little awkward. But then once I started seeing people I met, then it was fun. Mm-hmm. But we entered this. We bought some raffle tickets to support the local church or the local community, and we won. And they said, I didn't know, like I sent Bella, as soon as they won, I'm like, I'm not going up. I sent Bella up on the stage. I'm like, honey, go. She just came off dancing. She didn't know what she was doing. She had no idea. And I'm like, just go on the stage. And we won. So she takes the ticket, she goes on the stage, and the guy goes, pollo or something else, and she said pollo, and then she comes down and she's got a whole cooked chicken with a whole plate of sides and food, and we won we won a chicken. Like, so it's that close. Like that was your prize for winning the winning the raffle. Yeah, it was great. We're gonna have it for dinner tonight.
Oh, awesome. Oh yeah, no, these raffles are amazing. They sometimes will have like you win a cow, right? Or you win a lot,
a live cow.
You've seen those, yeah, of course. Of course, or you win a calf, right? Yeah. You win random stuff. I guess people donate different things, but I've donated like a whole chicken to some of these before.
Oh, no kidding.
That's one of the prizes is a whole chicken.
Oh, that's awesome.
A roasted chicken.
Dead or alive.
Jacob won a soccer ball the other day in some raffle. He was pretty excited. All right, so let's jump into the financial system. So, we have a monetary situation. Let's say the dollar hyperinflates, loses its value perhaps, or let's say we have, another kind of debt crisis and credit freezes up and the banks are going under, and you've got a monetary situation like that. What does that mean for Ecuador? What does that look like in Ecuador? And I'll just start by saying, in the Western world, in the more complicated economies, that is a very bad situation.
Sophisticated.
So more sophisticated is the correct word. Thank you. In Ecuador, I'll say this: banking is completely connected globally. So I don't believe it's a situation where, in places like Ecuador, the banks would be unaffected. Right. I think it's a situation where the banking system here would probably not be in dissimilar shape to the banking system elsewhere. Right. in certain in situations like that. So what does that look like for the economy here, or for life here, I guess really is the more important question. Obviously the economy would go through a transition period. There would be some disruptions there, but what does it look like for life here? Well, I would say probably in places like Guayaquil and Quito and the largest cities, there'd probably be some difficulty, I would imagine.
Oh, sure.
They don't have gardens. They don't have chickens running around. Like, they're a little more reliant on supply chains and things like that. Still simple ones, but supply chains nonetheless. I would imagine there would be some disruption there. I'd imagine prices for certain things would have a spike, at least temporarily. I would imagine there would be shortages of certain things in certain places, at least temporarily. In places like this, where we are, in the more rural areas, again, I think there would be an adjustment. There would be some differences, but it's hard to imagine, outside of, again, maybe some stores don't have some things, or some stuff becomes unavailable. But I think, number one, it's a country and a culture that's used to barter. So it's not a place where people would have any difficulty understanding or working with each other as a community, to not only to get by, but specifically also that too, which is important, right? Like your neighbors here. It's not a place where you're hey Mike and that's it, right? It's a place.
I mean Jim.
right. How's the family? It's not that, right? It's a place where your neighbors for real, and the community. So there's real community. But also, like, people trade with each other here all the time.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, people trade cars for properties regularly. People trade people trade cows. I mean, people trade, right? So the barter system here, it already exists and would just kind of increase. But yeah, I think in the rural areas, life would be affected, but not that much. I mean, I think the new systems of exchange would pop up pretty quickly, and again, it might be harder to get a washing machine for a while, but you're not going to have a food shortage. No one's freezing to death. No one's starving to death. None of that kind of.
And I think it's not. The critical point is that it wouldn't be a new system of exchange for this culture that we're in. It's the system of exchange that kind of exists now on a level, right, on a material level, and it would just be more prevalent. It would just be more, it wouldn't be a huge transition where you go to somewhere in the States or in Canada, and it's a much different system. So to even take a step toward that barter system would be a huge step change difference compared to here, where we kind of operate that way already on a large scale. So to take it another step wouldn't be that big deal. But that first step to go from the system that it is now to some level of barter, and especially in the places that you talked about, which would be hit the hardest, the big metro areas, where again, those people that live in those areas typically in Ecuador don't have the gardens, generally don't have the farm animals, they don't have the fruit trees in abundance like they do in some of the rural areas. And then back in the West, those people don't have huge, you're living in apartment complexes or high rises, and community living buildings, and you don't have this, 7-foot chest freezer of storage. People don't have pantries full of goods anymore. People don't have root cellars anymore. People don't can and jar things for the winter anymore like they did back in the 50s and 60s. So you have less of a buffer in those areas that would get hit the worst. Because here you have people that have stuff, and they have produce, and they have cows, so they have things to trade. And there's no way to restore that surplus of goods immediately, and they don't have the stores to trade in the short term while those barter systems are implemented. So that's when things get weird, because desperate people in those times, you've got a newborn baby, and you're trying to feed it and give it formula or milk, and you don't have anything to trade. Like, you're going to do what it takes to get your baby something to sustain itself, right? So that's when the humanity kind of gets icky, and questionable, and that's where some of these rural areas in southern Ecuador offer a different view of that, or a different way to look at that. And but before we go any deeper on that, and I want to hear your opinion from Canada, Carl, but let's just address that, the whole currency and currency reset, that's not a conspiracy theory, right? That's not something that's debatable that's going to happen. Now, I audited banks for a living for 5 years through the whole 2008 reset, and I firsthand dealt with regulators from the FDIC, from the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, federal regulators in the United States, and I can show you documents from the government agencies right now that talk about the global currency reset, the quantum financial system that's currently running concurrently, parallel to the existing system. These aren't theories. These aren't like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. These are facts that government agencies are talking about, and that have documents on, that discuss, that are happening now, that are implemented on some level right now. That's not a question. That's not a what if this happens. That's actually happening. They talk about the global currency reset. They talk about the quantum financial system that's currently running parallel to the current system. Those aren't conspiracy theories. Those are facts. The largest governments of the world are talking about and implementing things regarding those systems right now as we speak. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when. All right.
Yeah. So. No, that's important. Did you want to chime in, or?
Hashtag buy Bitcoin.
Carl, the Bitcoin maxi.
It's interesting.
Right. Love Rafael Correa and buy Bitcoin. I think that's...
I don't know anything about Rafael Correa. I know you don't like him much, but to say that I love him, that's a step.
Accurate.
That's a step.
Completely and totally accurate.
No, but I was going to say, though, if Ecuador does go back to a barter system, I mean, clearly Jesse will be bartering kombucha, right?
Right.
I have chocolate balls in my back pocket. I could just barter with that.
Dude, I'll trade you for those chocolate balls. I want to try one. Are you ever going to make me one? They're so infamous, and I've never tried one, man.
You know what? Oh, by the way, for our viewers, so because we want to tell you about it, we're going to do a Thanksgiving event this year once again.
Yes.
End of November for Thanksgiving in Vilcabamba. Our goal is to feed 1,500 people. Last year we fed 1,000 people. We're just stepping it up a bit, and I'll be making the chocolate balls.
Yeah!
That means 1,500 chocolate balls. And
awesome.
We'll document that.
Awesome.
the whole thing.
That's a great event, man. Yeah. We have a. If you guys don't know, we have an Abundant Living charity that we give back to the community. We sponsor local sports teams. We do some other events. So this Thanksgiving event is one of our, we did it. It was our inaugural event last year, so this will be our second annual Thanksgiving give back. But it's a beautiful event, man. It's, we work together as a community to prepare the food and prepare a meal, and then we serve the local community and the elders and the kids, and we have games for the kids and music and treats, and it's it's like making my heart like feels good. You talking about you had an emotional day watching. It's a
sentimental.
All
right, it was
life.
Emotional. It was emotional.
Like, this makes me emotional, man.
Yeah,
like it's powerful.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description down below as well if you haven't seen the video from last year. But we'll do another one this year. It'll be good. I'm excited.
So yeah, if anybody out there, is so charitably minded would work. There's a better word for it. What's the word when you give? You are
philanthropist.
Yeah,
philanthropist.
Yeah, I mean, after all this, I'm sticking with charitably minded. But if you're charitably minded, so we've started to do some things through the charity over the last year. But we're really excited about where the charity is going in the future. So we put aside a percentage of all income from our real estate company, as well as our development company that goes towards the charity. So we're funding a lot of that stuff, really almost all of that stuff at this point ourselves. But, what we're really excited about is some of the places where the charity can go. So if you're interested in sort of helping the community here, we'd love to reach out to us, info@abecuador.com. We have a really awesome list of stuff that we're looking to do through the charity, including just improvements, in the area that allow for the community and the kids to just enjoy life more, to improve the community. We're really looking forward to putting together some sports facilities and leagues for the kids, which would be a lot of fun. Some people in need that we're really looking forward to help. There's folks here, locals that come up upon issues, right? Someone has a car accident, needs a bunch of surgeries, or someone has a significant medical situation, needs $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 for major surgery, things like that. And the community here is amazing, right? They come together, they raise money, they do raffles, they do all that stuff. But we'd really like to be able to step in on some of those and provide some help for the community. So if you're interested in any stuff like that, info@abecuador.com. We'd love to chat with you.
And there's a great team behind you guys. There's a great team, the charity team. It's a great team that can really pull together and do some really cool things. And they've already done some really cool things. So I'm excited for what's next.
So yeah, in terms of I don't know if you guys want to touch on any other kind of geopolitical safety stuff as it relates to Ecuador. We're going to be coming out with like a crime and safety episode. A deep dive. I think that's next week. Is that correct? Or the week after? Yeah. One of the next couple of weeks. That's gonna be fun. Kind of put into context a little bit. We're noticing some extremely negative international press on Ecuador. We saw that happen. This is the second cycle I've seen of that. So that happened big time in 2014-15. Of course, at that time I agreed with it because that was based on the politics of the country and some of the policies that were very anti-capital, right? This was a place that got scary for a couple of years to put capital into.
Hashtag Rafael Correa.
Hashtag Carl. And at that time, publications like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal and other financial publications were basically telling people, Ecuador should be off the map, off your list in terms of
happening again.
International investment destinations. And now what you're seeing is again, a sort of round of negative press, but it's based at this point essentially on safety, which essentially is absurd. There's been some like narco, what's the right word? Narco, I don't know, not traficante, but what's the, it's like, not the mafia is the wrong word, cartel. There's been like some narco cartel activity in a few areas here, essentially in the largest cities on the coast, basically like that's it. And they've been, just kind of related to that business specifically.
Don't give any more. Let's see it for the episode.
So,
right?
So we're seeing that press. So the point is right. We're going to do an episode where we break that stuff down.
Right. We'll frame it. We'll give you the right context. We'll tell you the truth as we see it with data, with statistics, with good comparisons, so that you have like the right or a balanced perspective on how to look at this and looking at it through the right lens. We're going to do our best to do that. The truth about safety in Ecuador.
All right, let's move on. So Jesse Sheldon Huffy, 1824. Thank you for the question. Guys, if you're enjoying the episode, please put a like on the video. Jesse, Brandon, or Carl, who's got the best beard, guys? Put it in the video.
Is that on?
I mean,
is that
it's
part of the question
definitely Brandon, but say Jesse anyway, because you want to make me feel good. And we'd love to hear from you in the video.
I mean, they've called me La Barba here.
La Barba.
Or actually, hashtag El Barbón.
El Barbón.
All
That's
right.
what I say
were they making fun of me
when
then?
I refer to
They call me
Brandon.
is that the
No,
female
that's
version?
the beard, La Barba, the beard.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No, but when
Barba
I refer to
is a
Brandon,
feminine word,
El
so-
Barbón, like the guy with the beard.
Yeah,
you know,
El
the, beard-
Barbón.
the bearded man, and
Right.
they know who that is.
Right. You.
No, that's
Oh,
Brandon.
sorry.
You're El Flaco.
El Flaco!
Actually, El Flacuchente.
I
Flaquito.
still get Hoven occasionally, which is
Hoven.
I'm
nice.
so sad. Like nobody posted Flaquito. Nobody wanted to see the, you know, the rare. You know, it was like this endangered species Flaquito at the river that I have footage of. Nobody wanted to see it, man. I'm disappointed. Might
Hey,
just share it
you gotta-
anyway.
You probably will. All right. My biggest concerns staying in the U.S. include, number one, likelihood of digital dollar and the capital controls that will come with that. All right. So I guess we have to take these questions, you know, in context, obviously, of Ecuador.
Yep.
You know, I agree, right? Like that's a concern. So I think, yeah. For me, that question comes down to control, right? If you have digital currency or if you have a central bank issued digital currency, you know, or any sort of regulated digital currency, then theoretically you get into the situation, the scenario where governments can control your currency, your spending. At the very least, they can monitor and know, you know, exactly what you're buying, when, from who, and monitor and regulate all that stuff. But if you get into the, you know, the sort of and again, this is not conspiracy either, right? Like if you look at
CBDCs are real.
if you look at
Right.
15-minute cities,
Yeah.
if you look at the, you know, the World Economic Forum sort of agendas, if you look at what folks like Justin Trudeau, ideologically aligned with Rafael Correa, if you know, you look at like what those folks are talking about,
He just flexed.
and so on and so forth. You know, these kinds of, he's just looking for excuses to show his mother. These kinds of
Me and Justin are good buddies.
Looking good, Carl. Looking good.
Thanks, bro.
you know, these kinds of scenarios are not figments of anyone's imagination, right?
I mean,
So,
not to
yeah.
go off on a tangent, but that's the reason why, and you've shared this before, I think, maybe not on the podcast, but why you didn't like Bitcoin and crypto from way back in the day, because of where you can see the logical extreme of where it ends up, right?
100%.
Right. So you want to touch on that now? Is that relevant for this or not?
I mean, only because it's, you know, it's fun sharing my opinion and just seeing another reason why Carl's wrong.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
the only reason I brought that up, because I know Carl wants to
disagrees.
talk.
Yeah.
No, I didn't
So
want to talk.
because I wanted to get that in.
I didn't want to talk. You were saying you can buy or sell without the digital currency and whatnot. I was going to say, i.e., the mark of the beast.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue on.
I thought you were going to go with. I thought you were
Bitcoin.
going to start on Bitcoin stuff and why Bitcoin
Listen.
solves the problem, but that's okay. No, that was actually a better interlude there. I like it. Yeah, that's interesting.
So like, if you're worried about control, right, through digital currency in this questions, what does that look like in Ecuador? Well, Ecuador has taken steps to digitize stuff. So Ecuador is not, I don't think anywhere in the world is immune to those things. I think the whole world is going in that direction, Ecuador included. That being said, you know, I don't know what percentage of this population still doesn't have a smartphone. It's not small, that number.
Small.
You know,
The
what
older generation for sure doesn't have smartphones.
Right. Certainly folks from the
20%
country.
maybe?
Yeah. You know, what percentage of this country, what percentage of this economy is still a cash economy? Most of it. Outside of the largest cities,
90%.
in certain situations, right.
It's pretty amazing.
You know,
It
it's still a cash society. And again, it's still a communal sort of, barter based in many ways, society. So I think they'll probably try some of that stuff here, like they will everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think they'll probably have some success. Like some people who are into that will jump on it, and the largest cities may even have some larger scale success implementing. It's going to be hard to get rural Ecuador to sign on to any of that.
I think the critical piece that I hope people take away from this specific conversation, and then others regarding safety, regarding cryptocurrency, regarding the global geopolitical stuff, is that these things are happening everywhere in the world right now. Like, crime is increasing in most places in the world. There's like threats of safety, people's perceived safety is becoming more and more, feeling like it's attacked, feeling less safe, almost everywhere in the world. The same with these global controls with regard to central banking, digital currencies, or cryptocurrencies, or social credit scores like they have in China, and all these different mark of the beast, like all of this stuff that's happening everywhere in the world, right? So the question right now, at least that I hope people ask themselves, isn't like, how do I escape that? How do I avoid that? Because I'm not sure that there's a place where you can say that's the place. You go there and you avoid it all.
This is a really important point,
right?
Yeah.
Because that place, as far as I know, doesn't exist. That's like some utopic, fantasy land that is not real. Every place has their issues, but there are places, in my opinion, that offer a solution that doesn't get you to those outcomes or doesn't contribute to participating in those control systems as acutely or as immediately. And Ecuador is one of those because of the things we've talked about as it relates to every other subject we've brought up in regard to, it's such a small country. It's not a big global player in geopolitical warfare and geopolitical, negotiations and big military conflicts, and they're a small place, a small country with an predominantly agrarian society that relies on barter in places, that is a cash-based society. All these things, those types of systems are very difficult to implement, particularly in a place like Ecuador, where the government doesn't have their hands in everything, and they're not, they still run like a business. And this kind of parlays into this topic because the Ecuador is on the U.S. dollar. People don't know that they're on the U.S. dollar, but they don't print their own money like the U.S. does, right? So they operate on the dollar as their national currency since I think 2000, or I don't recall when the 2000. So, but they have to run the government more like a business, more how you would expect the U.S. should run their government on, not running constant. I almost dropped an F-bomb. Not running constant deficits and having all these unfunded liabilities. Ecuador has to run it more like a business because they have less, perceived organization and resource within the government, and then they operate on a fixed currency that they can't print out of thin air, generally speaking. They don't do things that they can't make money on. They need to run it like a business. They need to generate revenue from it, right? So for them to implement some of these systems and these systems of control in other places where they can run deficits, it's easy. Just click a button, push it through. It's add it to pork on some bill in the United States, and it gets pushed through, and it starts happening. And here, it doesn't quite work that quickly, or the same acute, immediate impact that it would have in other places. From my experience, and I've only been here 2.5 years, so you guys have been here way longer. So you tell me.
Super important point, I think. Yeah. Number 2, and again, these are biggest concerns staying in the U.S., right? And we'll put them in the Ecuador context. U.S. is very susceptible to becoming a target for war. I think we covered that already. We're already being invaded through our southern border. I think the
politically incorrect.
Politically incorrect for sure, but I think the mayor of New York City is currently in Latin America campaigning directly con la gente to not come. Please don't come is the current Democratic mayor of New York City's plea to Latin Americans But you know, jokes aside, like I think Latin Americans, that is true. But I think Latin Americans actually like. So I had a friend. I don't know. I may have told this story on the pod, but I had a friend whose son, who I knew well as well, like did it right. He like illegally went to the States, crossed with a coyote, the whole nine. And they picked him up at the border, immigration, and they put him in a
They deported him, right?
Holding, right. No. They put him in a holding tank, and then the family was really worried. I was actually helping them. He was like missing for a week.
Right, I remember.
And I'm making phone calls and trying to see if we can help them. And I was worried. I mean, I know this guy well, like really nice guy. Yeah. They asked me for my advice, like should he go? And I was like, you guys don't understand.
Do you remember when I met them? I met them and I bought them bagel
the sandwich.
sandwiches.
And people don't understand here. People don't understand here like how difficult the life is in the States. Like yes, there's more opportunity for financial income through a job. That's true. Like it's easier to get a job. They pay a lot more. And hats off 100%. Like for me, hats off to immigrants 100% in terms of like going to another country to support yourself, support your family, working your brains out, and making the sacrifices that those guys are willing to make, right? Yep. Like a lot of folks are willing to live very differently than I'm willing to live, right?
Sure.
Just to make money, right? They're willing to like put a whole bunch of people in an apartment or a house and live very inexpensively and work their brains out and save their money, and there's some beautiful success stories on that. But I don't think people understand how difficult the life is, right? Anyway, so he goes up there, and now he's in construction and he's doing okay. And I tried to help him with a couple of contacts, but no, the government put him in a holding cell and ended up giving him papers to enter the country and actually flying him to where he wanted to go. Right. I forget if it was New York or Philadelphia.
And a stipend and probably an Obama.
And a stipend and an Obama phone, right? Exactly. But anyway, so
I gotta tell that to my Ecuadorian friends though. That's how lenient they are.
Right.
Yeah, they're letting people.
I'll tell them to call you.
Right.
Well, I got your back.
You get refuge. Like they can.
Yeah.
They
I didn't realize that. I thought it was actually really dangerous.
It was previously.
Right.
That's a new development over the last couple of years.
But you can claim refugee status, and there's all these social benefits you can get claiming refugee status. And you want to go conspiratorial. There are even firsthand reports of people saying from some of these Latin American countries, not families, like military-aged men, single men, that are saying, hey, I was offered X amount of money to come and do this on top of the social benefits that I would get as a refugee. Whatever that means, I don't know. But there are people claiming that that's happened to them, and they're crossing the border for that because they got a debit card with $2,000 on it, and they get all these social benefits that they get from crossing illegally, and they got a year to do it, and who knows. Again, I'm just saying, like, I've seen those reports, I've seen people saying that's true. Whether it is or not, who knows. But it's definitely goes to question, that border, the southern border, which is relatively easy to cross. And to be honest, the northern border is easy to cross. Now, I go up fishing on the boundary waters between Minnesota and Canada every year with my cousins and uncles and my dad. They've been going up there for 50 years, same place. But one year we were up there, and there was a border patrol agent that was staying at the outfitter cabins that we were staying at. And they flew drones, and he was a helicopter pilot, and they would do reconnaissance. And he would tell me that they were able to identify people would sneak into Canada and then cross the border south. Instead of coming from Mexico up, they would actually get into, it was easier for them to get into Canada. And then there's literally no control in some of these wilderness areas. There might be one border control agent for 5,000 miles of wilderness, and they would get help on supplies, and they would cross into the United States that way. Right, so it's not just the southern border that everybody thinks about. The easier border to cross from, according to this, one border control agent.
I mean, at least at that time too. Yeah.
At that time, they were coming through Canada, and when you look at the southern border, you look at some of the crime, and we'll touch on this in the crime episode. But I have friends that live in Texas and live in Arizona, and there's cities in the U.S. that have a really high murder per capita rate. that happen to be on that border. And then you look of some of the Mexican cities that have some of the highest murder rates. They're along that border in Mexico, right? So you look at, it's drug trade, it's human trafficking trade. It's this, just this evil debauchery that's happening on those things, and that's where the homicides are. And maybe we'll see what the data says. Maybe that's why some of the things that are happening in some of these big cities in Ecuador, it's related to that. We'll share that in the future.
So if we were to put this in Ecuador context, right? Ecuador had a similar kind of situation when Venezuela collapsed, right? So Venezuela collapses. I mean, Venezuela's been collapsing since 1998, but Venezuela had its true, sort of significant food crisis. It's too bad Correa didn't stay in power a few more years, and we could have had some of that here as well. But
actually no, because Ecuador has the U.S. dollar, so it would have been a different story, right? The Venezuelan currency collapsed.
Thank God for that. But
but the good thing is now we have a lot of nice Venezuelan restaurants in Ecuador with arepas and other Venezuelan fried plantain dishes and stuff. So
there's some of the Venezuelan flavors are. I've never been to Venezuela, but man, some of the flavors.
I have been to Venezuela.
Vilcabamba cool Garden's a Venezuelan-owned restaurant.
Is he's Venezuelan?
No, his wife is.
She's Venezuelan.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, it's one of Jesse's favorites, just for the record.
They have great margaritas.
They have good margaritas. They make this pizza.
Very cool restaurant.
With plantain, like plantain crust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fried plantain thing. I like that. It's pretty good.
Do you get the meat on it or no meat?
I've tried both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've got the great garden in the back.
Yeah,
it's a great spot.
Nice.
Actually,
It's
a really good
beautiful spot.
And they have
for
their
live
own craft brewed.
Yeah, it's the Izhcayluma brand. It's the Vilcabamba.
Oh, is that the one?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they have more flavors at Vilca Garden than they do at Izhcayluma.
Is there?
Because they have more taps, I think.
Right.
Izhcayluma only has three, and Vilca
yeah.
Garden has like 10 or something.
Can I share a little naivety? So until last night, I shared we went to that, Our Lady Fatima event in Izhcayluma. When Bella told me it's at Izhcayluma, I thought we were going to the Hosteria. So I'm telling our taxi driver, no, we need to go to the Hosteria, and he's like, no. He's like, bro, no, it's like, he's like, the
street,
bar,
basically.
he's like across the street is Izhcayluma. I'm like, no. I'm like trying to correct him, and he's like, no, bro. The barrio is Izhcayluma. I'm like, holy shit! I've been here for 2.5 years. I didn't know that was the name of the barrio. I thought it was the hotel only. I didn't know that was the whole barrio. Like I felt like such a moron. But whatever.
Sometimes we gotta feel how we gotta feel.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for the support, Carl.
Words of wisdom.
Deep thoughts.
All right, come on, guys. We're getting back to it. So the border's here. So I could see in a worst case scenario. So Venezuela collapses, and we had a wave of immigration. Yeah. Most of it went through Ecuador. Folks were going to Peru and other countries south of Ecuador, but we also we have a ton of Venezuelans living in this country. Mm-hmm. We did not previously. Okay. You now see in Loja, not in large numbers at all, but when I got to Ecuador in 2013, I lived in Loja for quite a few years. There was not any such thing as anyone begging for money. It did not exist. In a 250,000 person city, did not exist. Wow. Which I had never seen before in a city or really even a town. There's always people begging for money anywhere you go in the States. There was none of that. There was essentially no crime. And there was no homelessness at all, literally, again, zero, since the wave of Venezuelans. And again, I'm not, I'm joking around and things like that. It's absolutely tragic what the Venezuelan people have lived through. Yeah. Folks literally walked here and further south from Venezuela with kids in tow often. Can you imagine the desperation if you're leaving Venezuela on foot to come to places like Ecuador where there's limited job opportunities?
Right, for sure.
So politics.
Think about the motivation in the I don't know, gumption. What's the right word? To be able to, the perseverance to do that, right? It's a respectable thing, to do that, to get to that point. And again, we're making light or talking about some of this this immigration into the United States, maybe hypocritically because we left and we're here, but it's like
God bless them.
There's a difference. There's a difference between going to for a handout versus going because desperation, motivation, perseverance to get to walk here with a family and then try and make it work and do things to make it work and work hard. Like I know plenty of Venezuelans in Vilcabamba that I wouldn't say plenty. I know a handful of Venezuelans that work their butts off.
Oh yeah.
That are great additions to the community
100%.
and valuable additions, and God, I'm blessed that they're in the community.
No, it's kind of interesting on a quick tangent, like what took place in Venezuela, right? So Hugo Chavez came to power, I believe, in 1998. And then folks who saw the writing on the wall got out pretty quickly, right? So that first wave of immigration out of Venezuela took place in the early 2000s.
Wow,
so
that
folks,
long ago?
yeah, so
Wow.
folks that were educated, folks that had capital, folks that, they were like, uh-oh. And this was again sort of similar to Ecuador in 2014-15, right? People were getting capital out, people were leaving who were worried about the direction politically of the country. So that was the first wave. The second wave of immigration out of Venezuela was the middle class, like 10 years later.
Wow.
The third wave was desperation time.
Oh,
so that's the wave we're talking about, right? That's the wave where it's like, there's no food.
That's rough, man.
What do we do? Walk to the border and leave, right? And so, my ex-wife is Venezuelan. So I've been to the country. It's a beautiful, incredible country. Beautiful people, amazing food, tons of natural resources. I think it might be maybe the most natural resource rich country on earth. Like it's that
maybe Russia.
it's that it's I mean it's on that list. I think they I don't want to get into stats I'm wrong about, but it's either first or second in like proven oil reserves. They have every metal that you could ever possibly have. They have
just the diversity of resources.
they have everything in large abundance, including incredible soil and all the rest of it. Amazon, I mean, they got everything, and and they're anyways. But so in terms of border security, though, like Ecuador, if things break down around the world, I could see there being a flood of folks coming through from different places as needed. Also, securing the border here would be very easy as well. Right. So if they ever decided, hey, we're going to close the border, it's not like the U.S. where you've got thousands of miles of border, both north and south, that are often in the middle of nowhere. The middle of nowhere on the border here is not a place you're going to cross it, for the most part. And then there's a few spots where you can cross where there's actually roads and a place to cross. Right.
And there's Ecuadorian military bases right on the border in Zumba and other places, so it's not even.
Yeah, they're controlling the borders already. To some extent, and it's very mountainous, so I think it's harder for anyone to like walk in, right? Because it's a lot of big high peaks. Interesting.
Number 3, I'm sick of chemtrails and GMO food. So yeah, I mean, if you're someone who watches planes and what comes out of their, whatever, they're behind. Whether they're behind. They seem to have that in certain places here and not others. So on the coast you see some stuff like that. In the mountains where we are, you essentially do not. You essentially have the blue skies that you're used to from 1994, back home. And GMO food is illegal here to grow. So that doesn't mean no one is doing it anywhere. I don't know. But it's not legally, you're not supposed to. So
my understanding is that in the Ecuadorian constitution, they prohibit growing GMO crops in Ecuador, except under experimental usage. So,
is that right? Okay.
Like big agro or some large agriculture company could run some tests for GMO, but I don't think that would be on the market for sale or anything like that. But they could be doing some testing and trying things out.
Okay.
So there's no GMO food being grown here, essentially. Now Ecuador does import some products from other countries that could be tainted or that could contain GMOs, for sure. But it's very few things, and it has to be labeled by law in Ecuador. So anything that has GMO in it would say contiene transgénico.
Yeah, and if you want to live clean, it's a good place to do so.
For sure.
And let's take it up a notch, just like we or back up a level, just like we talked about with the global currency reset and the quantum financial system. GMOs and chemtrails are not conspiracy theories. These are things that are actually happening, and
they're contrails, Brandon. They're
right,
contrails.
Right. And they've changed, and what they've done is they've confused people, right? Again, so just like the GMOs, they don't call it GMOs in the United States anymore. Now it's bioengineered foods, right? So now it's labeled bioengineered. They changed the word so people don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's not GMOs anymore. It's GMO free when you know what when you know you want to avoid it. That group of people talks about GMOs. But when they're trying to hide it from you and they don't want you to know, it's called bioengineered foods, right? And that's what's on your label. Same thing with chemtrails. Chemtrails is for those tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. But what they don't deny exists is geoengineering, right?
Cloud seeding or something.
Cloud seeding, geoengineering, government agencies publicize, they tell you what they're doing, they talk about it. Yeah. It's not a conspiracy theory, guys. It's not.
Thanks for getting a shadow ban, Brandon.
Dude, it's but it's the truth, right? Geoengineering exists. Is that going to get a shadow ban?
Yes.
Genetic,
Like
bioengineered foods. Shadow ban this.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's just a lot less of that here, if any, really.
Yeah.
And like you said, on the coast, sometimes you'll have some probably commercial planes that are, or whatever it is.
I don't know. I notice it there and not here.
Yeah.
Well, I've lived here for over 2 years. I've literally never seen a plane.
Spraying, yeah.
Or a helicopter. I've not seen an aircraft.
No, I have. But literally in my 10 years, I've probably seen that, like a plane laying a line. I have probably seen that in my 10 years in this area I'm talking about. So Loja, Vilcabamba region.
Yeah.
I've probably seen it like 4 or 5 times.
I've literally never even seen a plane.
Yeah.
Obviously in Catamayo at the airport, obviously. Yeah. But here in Vilcabamba, I've never even seen a plane, let alone a plane laying a line.
Yeah. It's not a flight path that's very common. I think some planes might be flying into Peru from here or something.
The only helicopter you'd ever see here would be if the president's in town.
Sure.
Which has happened once.
I think I hear some mining companies also have helicopters.
They have helicopters, but not in this region.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that with the people, the expats that live in Vilcabamba as well, most people are very aware of these topics.
Yeah.
And if there was any lines in the sky, we would see it. We would see it on social media. Right. There'd be literally there are people whenever it does happen in the 4 or 5 times that you've seen it, will take pictures and post them on Facebook and post them on the WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups. And, there's a chemtrail.
But I just want to drive home for people like how different it is if you want to live healthy. Mm-hmm. Right, which matters a lot to me, and I think to you guys as well, and I think a lot of the people in this community. If you want to live healthy here, the difference is dramatic in terms of ease and cost. Mm-hmm. Right, so back home, if you want to go to an organic supermarket and buy organic foods, could be finished products, but let's say like really healthy stuff, let's say stuff to make salads, stuff to cook vegetables, fruits, berries, if you're a meat eater, clean meats, right? Fish.
Those things are all
let's say wild Alaskan, salmon
wild
or whatever.
Caught, right.
Right. Those kinds of things, you better be wealthy.
Those are premium. Those are premium items. You're paying a premium over worse quality, less nutritious, more chemically laden, more processed foods in the United States.
Right.
You're paying more for healthy, simpler, cleaner
foods. What
is
it like? I don't know the answer, but what does it cost you to make a big plate of organic salad back home? A beautiful salad with all kinds of stuff in it. There's more cheese and some nuts and all kinds of
stuff you'd feed your rabbits.
Back
the
home.
Stuff that Jesse eats every day at the office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna make that back home, I don't know what it would actually cost, but let's whatever those numbers are, let's do some comparisons, right? If you spend $1 at the actual place where they grow it organically, or at the Saturday organic market, if you spend $1 on lettuce, you've got enough lettuce to make a salad every day for that week.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, literally, you could buy enough romaine or a million other varieties that they have of organic lettuce for $1 to eat a large salad every day until next Saturday when you go back to the market. If you're buying, organic cucumbers, you're getting a bunch of them for $1. Like, for that same $1, you can fill your salads with cucumber. You can have cucumbers for your salad for that week as well.
Right, and you could buy a tub, a plastic tub like this big, maybe that deep, that won't even last a week because it's already older than when we're buying it here. So you can't even keep it you can't even keep it good to last a week. But that's probably $6.99, $7.99 in organic for like a baby leaf, or romaine spinach blend or something like that.
Right.
That's crazy. I mean, $7 for less. That's not even going to last.
And how sure are you even of the quality? Like, it comes from some farm in California. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe who knows what they're actually using on it?
Right.
Or it comes from the organic division of a company that produces all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Like, who knows? Are they actually? Who knows, right? So that's a little different here.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at one of those places for a long time, so they do.
So
I do know. Like, there are things that you would question, like, what the hell? Like, for example, when you're, you talked about complex supply chains and in some of these big food manufacturers, they're super complex supply chains. You're importing raw materials that are grown in other countries to process and package here to sell in other countries, right? You like, and you're moving them around through distribution networks across the country within one country, then overseas into other countries. It's super complex, but the controls on some of that are probably not what you would hope,
right? In
regard to, like, for example, gluten-free oats, right? So organic gluten-free oats. Sometimes the distributors will fill a truck full of regular oats that have less in general gluten than wheat products or other products, but there's still some. And then what's the word? Not the purification, when you clean it out, I forget, there's a word for it, where they clean the trucks to make sure that there's some of those processes aren't as robust as you might think. And sometimes, depending on, cutting corners and stuff, they'll load another truck up with gluten-free right after a gluten-laden truck. And then all of a sudden those oats are now absorbing some of that powder and that dust, and now there's gluten in some of that. So people, and maybe that doesn't matter for a big chunk of the population, but for the population that is that's hyper gluten intolerant, or have celiac disease, or have some of these other digestive gut issues, man, that's a big problem for them, right? And that's a control that's sometimes is not as robust as you might hope for that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's just one that I can share.
Right, and many others. Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Number 4, property taxes doubled for me last year, and government continues to grow without offering benefit to the people. Well, without weighing into the politics, which I happen to agree with. Wait, did I just weigh in? The property tax question is interesting, right? Because in many places in the States, I don't know the rules in Canada. I would imagine they're worse, because in general, I think that's the way, that's true. But the property taxes back home can be absurd. It's essentially like paying rent on your property annually. I mean, my grandmother, and my grandmother died, probably 15 years ago, and she moved out of the place I'm talking about probably 10 years before that. This was a luxurious place. She got up to $30,000 or $35,000 a year at one point in Long Island.
Oh, yeah.
In Long Island for property taxes. My dad right now, and this is actually a couple years old, this data point, he lives in rural Vermont. He's got about 60 acres of land in a very rural area. It's just woods. Like, it's the end of a road, and then he's got some woods in his house, right? I think he was paying $8,000 and change a year a few years back. It's probably more now. This is rent,
right?
And so again, it kind of going back to what we were talking about early on. It keeps that hamster wheel going. Sure. You better keep that income flowing. Even if you own your property, because you got to pay the government rent on the property that you own. And again, in Ecuador, right, 1/10% of the assessed value annually. You could own $1 million property here, which is a lot here. That's a very valuable property here. And your income, your property tax is $1,000 a year. And by the way, $1 million assessed value. So that would be market value, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million. You're talking about. So on a normal property here, you're paying, in property tax between $3 and $80 a year. That's like a normal property tax. So yeah, it's just something. It's a great benefit.
It's such a material difference than the United States, and that's when I talk to friends that are still there now, and they have $500,000 homes, 700. They're spending $30,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in taxes a year, right? So even when they pay that off, then they have this tax bill.
Better keep bringing in that income.
You got to keep the money in. You got to keep the money coming in. So it's definitely a dramatic difference and a significant advantage to, cost of living inputs, in Ecuador.
Uh-huh. Number 5, corruption in both our leadership and general population. For example, American men are the largest consumers of pornography.
Oh, boy.
And America hosts the most pedophiles in the world. Without checking these stats, I don't know if they're accurate or not, but, I would speak to the difference culturally in terms of values and morals between that culture and this culture. It's different. Not to say that this culture is the most moral culture on earth, right? You still got the music videos, and you've got stuff going on that's
in pop culture.
In pop culture,
right? Well, I think that should be a differentiation point. Like there's pop culture here and pop culture in the States, but then there's the general culture here, and it's not that. It's not
right.
It's not the music videos. It exists, but they're two different things. But anyway, I don't want.
Yeah,
no,
but I would add to this. I mean, not to be overly negative about it, but I have noticed that the younger generation in Ecuador, they do watch Hollywood movies. They do see, they're very aware of the mainstream pop culture, and in a way, they look at us and they're like, "What are you guys doing over here? Like, we want to go over there. We want to be in Beverly Hills. Right?
right.
We want to be like Fast and Furious, and like,
right.
They kind of. What are you guys coming here for? Like, we want to go where you're from, right? So that's happening a bit anyways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. But it's like if you're looking at culture from a moral perspective,
right?
I would argue that U.S. culture is fairly fallen, right? It's the values over there are not good, upstanding family values at this point, right?
I would say it's much more pervasive that it's not that anymore.
Yeah. And here, I mean, you still got the great-grandparents living in the house, being taken care of by everybody. Again, you don't have homelessness. Why? Because everyone takes care of one another.
Yep.
You've got mingas, for example, extremely common occurrence in rural parts of Ecuador, where when someone has an issue or the community has an issue, the community comes together and works together to fix it.
Yeah, there's definitely like some type of defunct morality in the States with regard to pop culture and how it spiraled down and how popular some of these pop culture icons become, and they're just despicable, like where they're just objectifying women, or you got these OnlyFans and they're convincing young girls to like show themselves and whore themselves out on cameras and video cams, and then you got these guys that right, we can go into why there's guys that are so desperate they don't even know how to communicate to establish relationships, that they're buying this stuff and they're paying for that. That's a whole nother story. But the guys that are profit, like guys like Andrew Tate and some of these other guys that are pushing this stuff, and there's some things that I agree with Andrew Tate on. I'm not saying to say that like he's a totally bad guy. I don't even know him, but there's a lot of shit that he does that's despicable, like with this with this video cam stuff, and he's getting these young girls to here's some money, like do this stuff, and that's and then you see in some of the, you know, the hip hop culture and some of this, you know, and it's even gone into some of the country music culture now, where it's,
Wow.
you know, show your body parts, like this is cool. It's cool to be a dude that has all these different girls. It's cool, like you see all these TikTok videos of these girls talking about, bragging about how many sexual partners they had in a night, and you know, like
Nice.
it's I mean it's insane, like, but it's almost like it's like that's become the norm, and that's become so popular. And it kind of goes back to the tipping point with Malcolm Gladwell. Now it's become everywhere, and all these kids see it. And now it's like, oh, I guess that's okay to act like that. I guess that's cool. I guess that's what I should do. That's how I should act. I guess that's fine. You know, like, and it's like the U.S. has become like a Sodom and Gomorrah, man. It's wild.
Yeah.
Brandon's going deep.
No, it's true, man.
Yeah,
And-
no,
and-
you're right, bro. Yeah, it's a sad state of affair, and that, you know, is kind of trying to make its way into the Latin culture as well, but definitely not to the same extent. I don't think there's still a lot of traditional family values here. It would be frowned upon for, you know, someone to cheat on their wives right here, or on their husband, right?
yeah, still goes on, certainly.
Of course it goes on.
But
of course
yeah,
it goes on.
I mean, you still got the, you know, the whole Latin lover phenomenon in you know, yeah. I mean, it's a complicated.
But yeah,
It's a
no,
complicated
you're right,
society.
You're right. But it is a Roman Catholic culture overall. They do.
Yeah.
It kind of still holds those family traditions and values, you know, Christian family values and stuff, more so, I think.
And
For sure,
and
for
particularly in this region, in the rural area we're at, like that's commonplace. That's the norm here. That's the tipping point. That's what the kids are seeing here in this area. You know, they're seeing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to like put some of that stuff in context again, like I don't want to overstate things. You know, for example, prostitution's legal in this country.
That's right.
And it's culturally acceptable for men to visit whorehouses. Like, you know, it's not a really like dirty, nasty, frowned upon thing in this culture
Compared to like Las Vegas,
to visit the whorehouse. Like, yeah, but like where I'm from, I mean, it's illegal in the States. And it's like it's really has a stigma, you know. Not that people don't do it. I'm sure they do. I don't know, but like it has quite a stigma, I think, or at least it used to.
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean, it's legal in some areas, right, in the States. It's like understood under the table.
Yeah.
In almost every area.
Oh, sure.
And then there are places like Prague and other places in Europe where, again, it's just like Ecuador, where it's Amsterdam, where it's.
Right.
You know,
no, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not even trying to make the comparison. I'm just trying to say it's not like this place is, you know, rainbows and butterflies when it comes to morality.
Yes.
Like there's humans
there's
being human, and
Agreed.
there's all kinds of underbellies and stuff that goes on, and like that's my only point.
Yes.
Number 6, American healthcare is a joke and essentially rapes the people financially. I could probably think of So I mean, look.
Amen.
We can't. That's right.
What?
Exactly. Can't go too deep here, right? Because it'd take forever. But yeah, you have just to draw the comparison, right? What you have in the States is you have a system where the insurance companies, the lawyers, and government have gotten involved in healthcare to a massive degree. And what that has done is it's driven costs up dramatically, and it's lowered the quality of service dramatically, because everybody is simply catering to not get sued and to get paid through the system of getting paid, which is whether it's private insurance or anyways, it's through that system. So people are beholden to the system, which again makes it very, very expensive. Because you have artificial demand for everything, because everybody's got health insurance which pays for certain things, and they have set prices, and you've got Medicare and so on and so forth. And everybody's holding very, very, very expensive insurances to cover lawsuit liability. And then again, it's all being heavily regulated, heavily controlled, which has all its manifestations. And I agree, it's turned the American healthcare system into a joke. I completely agree. In Ecuador, first of all, the alternative healthcare system is not regulated. So that's interesting, right? So if you're, if you go to a doctor, there's some very basic regulations, almost none, but very, very basic regulations. If you're seeking out a non-medical doctor for medical treatment, that industry is not regulated. Like, there is no laws on the books, to my knowledge, at all, for alternative treatment. So that,
doesn't it go a step further even in the Constitution that that guarantees your right to ancestral medicine or
I'm not sure.
indigenous
Is
medicine?
right?
There's things about this for sure, but just to clarify, also, you can't call yourself a doctor if you don't have like a doctorate.
Yeah. I'm just saying you can't, like, back home, you try to treat people for stuff, you've got problems.
Yeah. So in the United States, I'm not sure about Canada. I'm sure it's similar, but the legal system there, and because of the malpractice, that's another whole piece of it. Malpractice insurance and the lobby industry, blah blah blah. But there's a standard of care that to be certified under the certain governing bodies. There's a standard of care based on that you can offer as treatment for certain issues, certain diseases, and then there's certain things you can't even say are treatments. Legally. So I think that's what you mean, more the regulation in regard to that point.
Yeah.
So some of these alternative things or these natural solutions or remedies, you couldn't legally provide a standard of care under certain pillars of medical care in the United States, certain institutions that take certain funding, and it's super complicated, but here I think the lack of regulation allows for some of that to flourish and allows for some of that, ancient, or historical knowledge to pass from generation to generation and not be pushed out as taboo or shoved to the side or called quackery or whatever. And it exists and it works and it's not regulated here.
Yeah. So that part's awesome. And then the other part is the cost, right? So because you don't have those three things, right? So nobody's getting sued here for medical malpractice. To my knowledge, does not exist. I don't know that there's never been a lawsuit over a doctor screwing up, but that is not something that goes on here at all. So that overhead is gone and that risk is gone. So that's one thing. Again, there's little to no regulation here of the medical industry. And medical insurance is not widely used at all. So what those three things mean is that it's a very human to human interaction. It's a marketplace. You're actually going to see the guy whose reputation is best to treat what ails you. And he's giving you all the time in the world that you need. And you're speaking to him and going through the process. And by the way, they have all the modern everything.
Yeah.
Whatever modern treatment you need, they have everything. They have all the machines and all the technology and all the stuff. And what all that leads to is a human interaction that's dirt cheap. Right? So it's very expensive. So your normal doctor visit in this area is $30 to $40. That's what the visit costs you to pay out of pocket. No insurance, no deductible, no does it cover it, does it not cover it, is it in the network, none of that stuff.
It's not a 15-minute meeting where you're talking to the nurse for 5, the doctor comes in for 5.
And you're not waiting for
plugs
an hour.
your symptoms into a computer and says, all right, here's a drug for you, here's a drug, here's a drug. All right, see you next time, and pushes you out. You spend the last, it's not like that here. It's, you literally have, they're getting to know you. They're understanding what are some of the lifestyle factors. What are your symptoms? What are, they're learning about, maybe like how it was to be a doctor in the 50s. We go back to It's a Wonderful Life. Maybe that era of doctors was different, where you had the home visits and the doctors came to the house and it was different. And, back in the States when I, kind of had some of this revelation on healthcare and health in general and taking control of that in my own life and my own family's life, there were some books I read that were really eye-opening that I'll put some links in the comments. I'll find some of the books on Amazon. I'm sure, well, if they're still on Amazon, I don't know, but there's some really good books about, just the history of the allopathic Western medicine system in the United States and how it became like the premier medical system, the Rockefeller medicine, the Flexner Report with Abraham Flexner and the Carnegie Foundation, and there's several other ones about medical information and standard of care and all this stuff, you know, a lot of the things we've talked about, but it really gives a good foundation on how we got here and why it is what it is. And it makes you, you know, at the very least, you can read these books and you'll have a new perspective, and it'll give you some maybe some insight to ask questions about why things are the way they are in the Western medical world. Because there are a lot of things that, you know, after reading these that I'm like, wow, that doesn't make sense, or why do we do things like that? Now, don't get me wrong, there's some things that the Western medicine allopathic system does great, like emergency medical care, emergency trauma care in the West is off the charts epic. I have a friend that's medical device sales in trauma care, and the stories he shares on the way they can save body parts with the quickness and the technology and the tools that they have now, and save lives, not only body parts. I mean, it's off the charts. Like, but that's allopathic Western medicine. That is another level there, right? But some of these other preventative care, true health care that's not pharmaceutical driven sick care, like that's where there's other options in Ecuador, in my opinion, that are really valuable because of the lack of regulation.
Guys, if you made it this far, God bless you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please put a like on the video. You know, we really spend our time trying to get you guys real information on this country. Is it right for you? Are you gonna like it? You know, what's the real scoop on what life is like here? So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell.
How do we do, Jesse? Did we nail your questions? Let us know how we did.
Yeah, and thank you to her for these great questions as well, and to not Todd Davis, who gave us the other question that shall remain anonymous. Guys, hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
We truly hope to see you here one day.
So until then,
we'll see you next time.
Ciao, guys.